grace and grace alone.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you so much that we can gather this morning and celebrate the truths of your word. We thank you that we are made new, and that we are not dependent on our own selves, our own sinful selves, but we are completely dependent and filled with your Spirit. Thank you for the joy that we can have because of this, and allow that joy to be able to shine in our faces this week. And as we go home and interact with our families and maybe even our friends who do not know you, just allow that joy and that thankfulness for you and what you've done for us to show to them. And allow our lives to demonstrate that you are the most important thing to us, so that we can be a witness to our family and our friends as we go home, and an encouragement to them as well. And thank you for allowing us to gather this morning and to sing about these gifts that you've given us, and help us to carry out that spirit of joy this morning and throughout the rest of the day. And we ask this in Christ's name, amen. In Habakkuk we read, "What profit is an idol when its maker has shaped it, a metal image, a teacher of lies? For its maker trusts in his own creation when he makes speechless idols. Woe to him who says to a wooden thing, 'Awake,' to a silent stone, 'Arise.' Can this teach? Behold, it is overlaid with gold and silver, and there is no breath at all in it. But the Lord is in his holy temple. Let all the earth keep silence before him."
Let all mortal flesh keep silence, and with fear and trembling stand. Ponder nothing earthly minded, for with blessing in his hand, Christ our God to earth descended, our full homage to demand. King of kings, yet born of Mary, as of old on earth he stood. Lord of the Lords, in human vesture, in the body and the blood, he will give to all his faithful his own self for every truth. Oh, rank on rank the host of heaven spreads its vanguard on the way, as the light of light descended from the realms of endless day, that the powers of hell may vanish as the darkness clears away. His feet the six-winged seraph, cherubim and sleepless their faces to the presence, as with ceaseless voice they cry, Hallelujah, 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 Lord Most High.
be seated. David, let me put you on the spot. I saw you arrange that last song.
I did.
Where'd the words come from? Where was that from?
6th century hymn.
Like in 6th century, be the
the 500s.
500s. Okay.
And it's called the Liturgy of Saint James. It was included in that liturgy, and it's often sung at Christmas Eve during that time because of the incarnation aspect of the hymn and everything. But we just kind of wanted to put a new kind of twist on it.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, when Diane and I tell people that our job requires us to work on Sundays because we're out in churches most Sundays, and I don't carry a paper Bible anymore because you never know what you're going to find there. I preached in 8 different Bible versions this year. As I go from church to church, it is rare that I hear the same songs I heard in the last church. It's kind of cool to see what God's people enjoy. So this morning, we have Pastor Jim Combs with us. Back in the late 80s, in 1989, Jim went to a church in Michigan that had 50 adults and 80 people. And he has stuck with that ministry over the years. And now the River Church is a multi-site church with 10,000 members in it. And God has used him to start recovery ministries and also to minister to thousands of inmates in addition to his pastoral ministry. And he is the brother-in-law of a friend of mine who used to work there. That's where we got the connection. And I'm glad today for you to welcome Pastor Jim Combs.
Buddy, man, I'm so excited about getting here and spending a little time with you. And for the next few days, we hope somehow to be an encouragement to you. This is what I do. I pretty much speak just about every single day somewhere. I travel during the week, and then I'm always back at my home church and speak typically 5 times on a Sunday morning, usually 8, 9, 10, 11 times on Saturday and Sunday, and that's what I do. You're going to find out. I'm a little wired. Some of you could use it this morning, I can tell, and we'll try to be an encouragement to you. I got a call one day from the United States government, and they asked me, they said, listen, we were wondering if we could fly you to Germany to speak to troops coming back from Afghanistan and Iraq. And I said, absolutely. Now, I never had the privilege of serving in the military, and so I've always thought I kind of like, owed my country a little bit, and I said, I'm in. And so a number of months later, they put me on a jet, and they flew me to Ramstein Air Force Base, which is one of our hubs there in Germany. And I get there, they put me in a vehicle, and they drove me to the Alps. Now, I'd never been to the Alps before, and the government had rented a giant facility there, sort of a recreation, kind of a camp sort of deal. And they'd invited different branches to come, and soldiers could sign up. And we have some amazing men and women doing some pretty cool things around the world for us. So you guys are great, and we do. And yeah, you should give them an applause. And so I get there, and they put me in my place, and it's kind of a neat kind of spot to be in the world. And we're there, Air Force personnel, Army, Navy, even some Marines. And they'd signed up for this sort of getaway retreat, and each night I would speak to them. Well, one of the problems I had was I thought, how am I going to relate? I'd never been to boot camp. I was never in the military. I'm older. So how am I going to fit into, sort of this kind of world? And every morning at chow, breakfast, they would announce an activity. I noticed that kind of right away. And the first day there, they had an activity that they offered, which they would pay for, and then everybody could sign up for it. And it was mountain bike riding through the Swiss Alps. And I thought, well, I can pedal a bike. I can go ride a bike. I'm going to give this a whirl. And so I signed up, which was, by the way, one of the stupid things I've ever done in my entire life, signing up for that. See, these guys are in like great shape, and I'm like not. And so I sign up and get connected on this deal, and they give me a bike, and man, these guys are like pedaling machines, and they're pedaling through the mountains there, and it's just absolutely incredible. And man, I'm just like, are you kidding me? Just trying to keep up and do this whole day's journey, and we get finished for the day, and that wasn't the bad part, man. I'll tell you right now, it was the next morning that I couldn't even get out of bed, and these legs weren't working very well, and I'm not even going to tell you what that seat will do to you. You guys out there? And but anyway, so I get up, man, I'm thinking, are you kidding me? This is like torture. And I go down to the breakfast again, and I've always struggled, listening to things the way that I probably should. I have ADHD to the nth degree, and you may find that out over the next couple of days. And so they made an announcement for the activity, and I tend to not catch it all, but the announcement was they were going to take cable cars up to the top of the Swiss Alps. Now, it's really kind of cool. You're like 4,000 or 5,000 feet up there. It's snow. You're down. It's like 90 degrees. You're in shorts. And so you get on these cable cars, and I thought, man, I can sign up to do that. I can do that even though my legs are like toast here. I can do this. And so I get on this cable. I sign up. I get on the cable car, and I happen to get on with a bunch of Marines. And these crazy Marines start rocking this bad boy. You get what I'm saying? And I'm thinking, man, I'm about to beat up some Marines. But anyway, so we get up to the top there, and you're in shorts. You have a snowball fight. It's just off the charts cool. And so we got done with that. And then they made the part of the announcement that I did not hear them say. They said, listen, we're going to begin the hike down in a few minutes. I thought, what did I sign up for, man? I can't, my legs are like so sore from that bike thing. I don't want to do this hike thing. I'm thinking, now how am I going to do this? Am I going to go sissy out and get on this cable car and these guys will stop listening to me every night? What am I going to do, And about that time, some paratroopers came over to me and they said, hey, Pastor Jim, how would you like, we're going to parachute off the mountain. Would you like to go with us? Now, I'd never done it before. And I began to think, man, what's the quickest way down this mountain, man? Walking or parachuting? And I said, can you guys teach me? And they said, yeah, absolutely. And I said, I'm in. And so I signed up and got all set up, and they began to give me a lesson. And I said, what does that look like? And they said, well, it sort of looks like this. They said, here's how things go. They said, what's going to happen is you're going to stand back off the edge of the cliff, and we're going to take off running one at a time, and we'll dive off, and then you jump off the edge side of the mountain, and you jump out as far as you can. And so I remember going up to the side of the cliff and looking down, thinking to myself, dude, it's like 5,000 feet down there. And so I asked a question. I just said, what if my chute don't open? One of the guys said, it won't matter. I'm saying, yep, it won't matter. And so, man, it came time, and I'm thinking, this is insane. They show me how different things to do and what not to do. Next thing I know, man, it's like you're watching them, jump out of the airplanes in the movies, and man, boom, 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 and it come my time, and I remember taking off, I leap off the side of that, cliff. My chute opens, boom, kind of snaps you into place a little bit, and I'm thinking, wow, this is like crazy. But they forgot to tell me about something. They forgot to tell me about what's called wind shears. You say wind shears. I didn't know about them either. What happens is when the wind hits the side of the cliff, what happens, the wind will go up, some of it will go down, but what happens is you don't see it coming. And when you have a parachute, the wind comes underneath of your chute, and it feels like, honestly, God reaches down and grabs the top of your chute and jerks you up. Man, it does. I mean, it snaps you up, and you'll go up hundreds of feet in just seconds, man. They'll just grab you and boom, pull you straight up in the air, and you're like going, man, they didn't tell me about that. And you don't see it coming, and after a few of those, it's like the craziest roller coaster ride you've ever been on. Next thing you know, I get upset stomach and I puke. I do, man. I like hurl up in the air. I mean, you ought to watch puke at like 4,000 feet, dude. It like sticks out there. It stays together. It's the weirdest thing. I remember doing this, like going, wow, that's kind of a weird thing to see. Your puke floating together in the air. And there it goes. And then I thought to myself, don't run into it. Don't run into it. I can't imagine, man, all of a sudden there I go, sailing my parachute into my own puke. I promise you I would puke again. Anybody with me on that one? It would have been a crazy moment. And so, man, I kind of avoided my puke. It kind of dissipated. I hit the ground, did a real nice landing. Guy next to me does a nose plan. I look over him and said, who's the man? But anyway, cool moment. Somebody asked me, why would you do something so crazy like that? Now, most of you don't know me, but here's what I've discovered in life. The majority of people that I know would rather sit it out. Whether you like this statement or not, they'd rather sit it out than dance. They'd rather miss out because there's something that makes them hesitate from going on this incredible journey. Well, let me tell you why I showed up here for 3 days. I didn't come here looking for a paycheck. I didn't come here because, wow, I'm going to get this incredible opportunity. I speak everywhere, every day. I was in Florida last week. I'll be in Middle East next week. I was excited about coming and being here with you for this reason. I'm looking forward to watching God excite you and ignite you. That's what's thrilling in my heart. You see, I believe that there is a real urgent need in our culture for some amazing young men and women to have an explosion of God in their soul. And if that doesn't happen, our culture and our country's in trouble. And so being here today, I was pumped about it last night when I got off that airplane. And boy, what a journey that was. Wow, maybe we'll talk about that after bed. But getting here, man, I was just wired. I couldn't wait. I've been hanging around here for almost like 2 hours, walking around waiting for you to get here. And you're like, here. Hi, how are you? Good to meet you. I'm Pastor Jim, man. I'm glad. This is good. Man, I want God to do something in you in the next 3 days. I'm hoping maybe some of you might just become that Elisha, man, that you have a passion, you know what, for that extra blessing from God. I'm hoping some of you, man, might get so lit up, you might become that David that you go attacking the giants of this world and become this amazing person that's a world changer. I'm sort of excited about hanging out with some of you amazing ladies that might be like Esther, that God might use in a way that will be just incredibly off the charts. I'm pumped about watching some of you and hearing about some of you get out of the boat and go for a walk with Jesus like Peter did on the water. And I'm going to spend the next three days, and you say, man, you are really, really wired, guy. You haven't seen anything yet. Because I'm going to do my best to step in your life with all I have. Why is that? Because like Paul said to Timothy in 2 Timothy chapter 1, right around verse 6, he said this. He said, I want to stir up the gift that's within you. I want to stir you up, son. Young lady, I want so much to see an excitement fill your soul that all of a sudden you might, in the next 3 days, wake up realizing God's got this incredible journey for you. He wants to do things with you that he can't do with anybody else who's ever been born. Hang on, guys. I'm ready to go. Hi. For a few minutes today, I want to share with you a little bit of who I am and a little about my personal story. And I want to do it by sharing with you a law of God. Later on, you say, a law of God, yeah. Sometimes I think we think of the law of God, we're talking about those things that Moses carried down, that mountain that day, but there's much more to the law of God than that. You see, there are laws of God that exist. For example, if you draw near to God, God will draw near to you. That's a law of God. The Bible teaches me that if you'll call upon the name of the Lord, you'll be saved. That's a law of God. There are other laws that exist that we don't talk much about. But one of the laws of God is this: given it shall be given unto you. The book of Luke, chapter number 6, teaches us that that law does exist, that when you give to God, God will give back. And so for a little while, I want to take you on just a little bit of a journey and have any of you guys play high school football? Did you? You played high school football? Will you do me a favor? Will you stand up right where you're at? Tell me your name. Evan. Evan? All right, Evan, you're going to help me out, all right? You ready for this, bud? You're going to help me out. Evan, we're going to pretend that you're God, okay? Now, dude, I got some big news for you. You're not. Okay? You're not God. But long time ago, in fact, long time ago, God did something pretty amazing for me. And God decided to throw me life. How many of y'all believe God's a giver of life? You out there? How many of y'all believe God's a giver of life? Work with me this morning. How many of y'all believe God's a giver of life? Yeah, God's a giver of life. And God gave you life. Well, God gave me life. And when he gave me life where a kid should never be allowed to be born. My mother had me when she was 15 years old. My dad was an addict. My grandfather spent a life term in prison for murder. Yeah. I grew up with dope dealers and felons. I grew up in a world where no kid should ever grow up. I grew up as a kid who didn't experience Christmas, birthdays, knew nothing about any of those things. When you talk about dysfunction, you're talking about growing up in a world like most of you have no idea about. In mixed company, I couldn't even tell you some of the things that I had to see as a kid, watch grow up. I grew up with murderers. I grew up with people who will spend the rest of their life in prison. I grew up in that world as a kid. Stand back up, Evan. Who told you to sit down, dude? Remember, you're not God. You can't do what you want. We're just pretending you are. You good with me? Yeah. So God throws me life. And I start doing with my life what everybody else in my world was doing with their life, because it's how it works. I started making some decisions, and I knew I was going to be in trouble. See, in the neighborhood I grew up in, you don't come out of. You end up in two places. You end up in a box or a cage. And I can tell you the story about every single kid in my neighborhood. I can tell you about Scotty, who lived 2 doors down. He was my buddy. He couldn't deal with it. He stuck a shotgun in his mouth and pulled the trigger with his toes. I can tell you about Mark, who OD'd on coke and blew his heart out. I can tell you about Pat, who flipped his car because he was high one night. I could go down the road. I could tell you about Mike, who's doing 25 years as a habitual. I knew where I was going. So everybody in my family went there. I knew what I was heading for. When I was 17 years old, somebody came up to me and said, "Hey, Jim, you want to do something crazy?" Now, guys are kind of getting used to me. I like crazy. I've always liked crazy. Maybe that's why I picked Evan. But I said, "Yeah, let's do something crazy." They said, "Why don't you try throwing your life back to God?" I said, "Like what?" So I didn't grow up church like some of you. I didn't know anything about Jesus, the Bible. I didn't grow up with any of that stuff. I grew up with criminals. I didn't know anything at all about what God wanted from me, who God was. Nothing. No background whatsoever in any of the things that are, at the end of the day, ultimately important. And I said, I laughed it off. But deep down inside of me, here's what I knew. I was going to be in real trouble real soon. And if there was a real God, and he could really help me, I could really use it. So one day, not even understand what I was doing, I did the craziest thing I've ever done in my life. I threw my life to God. And you know what God did? God threw it back better. First time in my life, man, it wasn't a dope dealer, it was a hope dealer in my life. First time in my life, I had something that I never had. Forgiveness, peace, something changed totally in my life. And then I began this amazing game. You could say, "What are you talking about, this amazing game?" Now after all these years, that's all I do. I just play catch with God. I throw him my pain and he throws it back better. I throw him my dreams. Don't drop me. And he throws them back better. Do you understand? This crazy game. One day I'm playing catch with God and he does something kind of weird, man. He throws me a wife. I don't know what to do with that action. See, I didn't grow up learning family. I don't know how to be like a husband. I wasn't even sure I could spell it. Husband? I got a wife, man, and women are like weirdos. Sorry. You are. You just are. Said to my wife the other day, "I want to go fishing." She said, "Fine." She didn't mean fine. She said, "You don't want to do that." That's what she meant. I said, "Hey, I'm going to go out with my buddies. We're going to go watch a football game." She said, "Go ahead." Go ahead don't mean go ahead to a woman. Go ahead means I dare you, dude. I got a wife, man. What do I do with this? I have no idea. You say, "What'd you do with her?" "Threw her to God." You know what God did? God threw her back better. We just celebrated 38 years of marriage. Can you imagine that? 38 years. Nobody in my family's ever experienced anything like that. I got a wife, man, and I married up, dude. She's one good-looking woman. Smart, amazing. Didn't grow up the way I grew up. And somehow, you say, "How'd you get here?" I got her. God gave her to me. And after all these years, it's kind of amazing. And she's the most incredible pastor's wife I've ever met. You see, what I do is insane in the church world. I speak over 600 times every single year. I go any place God lets me go. I've never charged one time in my entire ministry to preach a sermon, not once, because I don't believe the gospel should be given, by way of a paycheck. I believe that, man, we are called to do something amazing, and my wife's right with me, and I keep playing this crazy catch with God. And God's given me an amazing marriage, and she's my best friend, and I'm crazy about her. She wanted so much to be here with you today. She was going to come with me, except for her mom had surgery and she couldn't come. The last time I was here, which was like 5 or 6 years ago, she was here. She wanted so much to meet you guys. I said, "This is going to be off the charts. These kids are crazy, amazing, Carol." Well, God does something kind of nuts along the way. God throws me a son. Say, "What'd you do with him?" I didn't know how to be a dad. I didn't even have a dad. No dad ever showed up for anything in my life. I don't know what a dad looks like. I don't know how to be a dad. What's a dad look like? My dad checked out, man. He checked out long before I can remember. You say, "What'd you do with that kid?" I threw him to God. Sorry about that. That was a little low throw, wasn't it, kid? You know what God did? God threw him back better. You say, "What do you mean?" Do you know my son today is a pastor of an amazing church. Just a crazy church that God's done amazing work with. You say, are you kidding me? Yeah, I just threw him to God and God threw him back better. Me having a pastor's kid, God throws me a second son. You say, what'd you do with him? I chucked him right to God. Say, what'd God do with him? You won't believe it. He pastors the largest church in his city today. My second boy just kills it for God, loves the kingdom of God. He's just an amazing young man who's on fire for the things of God. Say, how'd that happen? I threw him to God. You know what's nuts? God threw me a third son. You say, no chance. What'd you do with him? That kid was wild. I threw him to God. You know what God did? God threw him back better today. He's an amazing worship leader. He's already done some recordings. He's an incredible kid, man. He can sit on a piano, man. He can light a piano up in ways that nobody else I've ever seen before. Plus, he can also stand underneath a basketball rim and dunk it, tomahawk dump it with 2 hands. You wouldn't even believe it, man. The kid's just one of the most amazingly talented kids you've ever seen. What happened? I threw him to God, and God threw him back better. God threw me a 4th son. You say, you got to be kidding me. It's just a great journey. I threw him to God. He just graduated from Cedarville University, and now he's a sheriff's deputy in my hometown. An incredible kid. He runs the security in our church. Just a top-notch kid. I'm playing catch with God, and God keeps doing these amazing things. And one day I said, God, I'm sick of boys. I said, how about a girl? My wife couldn't have any more children. And God threw me a little girl. We adopted her when she was 2. My little girl was addicted to crack cocaine the day she was born. Her biological mother is a hooker, streetwalker, yep. Her biological father's a pimp and a dope dealer. When God threw her to me, I knew God threw her to me right, because I was the guy who could understand her. She's my girl. She's Daddy's girl. Ask her. She sent me a text early this morning. She said, Daddy, I love you. She's 21 years old. She graduated from high school. She's trying to figure it out like a lot of 21-year-olds like you are. But she's a great little girl, and she loves her dad. Say, how'd that happen? I threw her to God. God threw it back better. See, I just learned this amazing concept. It's the law of God. Are you listening to me? Given it shall be given unto you. I'm trying to get you to understand. Once you begin this journey of playing catch with God, it's off the charts, fellas. It'll blow your mind, blow your world up. God, as I keep playing catch with God, one day God does something really kind of strange. God throws me a church and makes me a pastor. Are you kidding me? I ain't pastor material. I got kicked out of school the first time in the 4th grade. That was the first time. Do you understand? I've struggled staying in school my whole life. When I thought I had ADHD, I was tested a long time ago. That's the reason I kept getting kicked out of school. I have a massive learning disability, and they say that I'm incapable of learning. In the 8th grade, the doctors came in and said, this kid can't learn. They're going to have to put him in special ed. In the 1970s, they had a name for us. They called us SPEDs. They called us SPEDs. Kids would make fun of the SPEDs. They would tease the kids because they couldn't learn like other kids. Now God throws me a church and makes me a pastor. Are you kidding me? I didn't grow up in church. I don't know enough about the Bible. I'm just a simple guy, man. I ain't very sharp at all. Say, what'd you do with that little church? That little church of 50 adults and 30 kids, I threw it to God. And you know what? God keeps throwing it back better. And he said a little bit earlier, that church now has over 10,000 members, and it's absolutely insane. You've never seen anything like it. You ought to just check out what God's doing in an amazing place just north of Detroit called the River. It's nuts. I don't even know what's going on half the time. All I know is that God keeps blowing this place up. We now are in multiple sites. We had multiple sites before it was printed in the book, before seminars taught it. We had multiple services before anybody even began to do it. See, it's been almost 15, 20 years ago that I began multiple services. And the reason I did is because the auditoriums were so full, I couldn't get any more people in there. I didn't do it to grow a church. I believe Jesus grows churches. What happens is we got to get to the place where we understand that we play catch with God, and I just keep throwing it to God. One day God throws me a little church out in the country and says, hey, how'd you like to try pastoring a couple churches at the same time? I'm game. Gives me a little church, about 30 people. This last Easter, you know what's nuts? That church had more on Easter than there are people in the entire town that the church exists in. You say, how'd that happen? Yeah, over 1,200 people gathered on Easter in a town that only has 1,200 people. It don't make any sense. You say, what's going on? God's going on. You throw it to God. Hang on, baby. The journey is incredible. I could tell you about today now on I-75. There's an exit that exists just north of Detroit, and there's a gigantic over 100,000 square foot building that seats somewhere, if you want to, around 7,000 people. You say, what's that all about? I said, God, we sure could use a neat little place to have church once in a while. He said, here, I'll give it to you. And what did God do? I threw him my dreams, and God threw them back better. Listen, I'm trying to teach you something. I'm trying to ignite inside of your soul a desire to play catch with God. Listen, you keep doing with your life what you want to do with your life, and you'll keep doing what your life is going to happen to you, and you'll burn your dreams to the ground. You learn to play catch with God, it's off the charts, kid. When you understand that you throw your life to God, he throws it back better, hang on. I want to tell you something. It's unbelievable what he'll do. You keep throwing your dreams to God, and God will keep throwing them back better. I'm standing here today telling you, I don't get why the United States government calls me on the phone and says, hey, Jim, you want to come to Germany? Yeah. But every single week of my life, man, somebody's calling and saying, will you come and speak? Will you come and share? And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, I'm just a sped. I'm just a special ed student, man, who struggles learning. Man, I'll never forget, dude. My mom came home when I was in the 8th grade, walks in the door, she's crying. I said, Mama, what's the matter? She said, nothing. I said, Mom, what's the matter? See, my mom had, by the time she was 18 years old, had 3 children. I said, Ma, what's up? She said, they say you're a pretty good boy, but you're incapable of learning. You know how many times throughout the years I've looked up at the ceiling and remembered what that school counselor told my mom? You're incapable of learning. You said, what do you do with that? You throw it to God. You know what God does? He throws it back better. And by the way, I got 2 bachelor's degrees and a master's degree. Dance on that. Yeah, I got a master's degree in psychology. You know what they say. People have psychology degrees, have psychological issues. That may be correct. But I've learned this incredible game, and I just keep throwing it to God. A few years ago, I got an invitation from a warden of a prison. Like, what? They said, come tell your story. I haven't told you much about it, but they said, come tell your story to our inmates. We think you could do it. Northern Ohio. I said, I'm in. I went there and spoke. Man, God like shook the prison. I don't go to the chapels, man. I go in the yard. I go right out in the yard, and they open up all the, the cells, and they bring them out. And usually it's somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 felons that I hang out with, the gangs, the thugs, every kind of gang you can possibly imagine. They come out there, and we set up this thing, and I get to speak to them. Wardens tell me now today, it's crazy what's going on. You say, I fell in love with these guys that were broken, that the church could care less about, that nobody wants to do anything with them because they got nothing to give. So I did something. I said, God, I've been playing catch with all these years. I want to throw a dream to you. And I threw him a dream about working in prison ministries. You know what's insane? I'll be in 51 prisons this next year. 51 prisons. 51 prisons, which is somewhere around 100,000 inmates that I get to go, share the love of God with and watching God do a work in their lives. And the sad part is that so often in the church world, we could care less about people that don't have anything to give back to us. But you watch when God transforms people's lives, it's unbelievable. 100,000 inmates next year that I'm going to get to share the love of God with. You say, what'd you do? I threw God a dream, and God threw it back better. One day I began to notice that these prisons are filled with unbelievable amounts of people who are there for one reason. They're addicts. They're strung out addicts. They're hooked on heroin and crack, and they're meth dealers. They're all the people that I knew when I was growing up, and the world that I knew and knew everything, that had to do with it. And I said, God, I'd like to gather with a few addicts and try to help them out. So I threw God a crazy dream, and on Tuesday night, I started inviting addicts to come hang out with me. And so they do every Tuesday night. Yeah, I'm going to miss them tonight. Only reason I'd miss them is because I'm coming here to hang out with you. Otherwise, I'd be on a plane going back. Because every Tuesday night for the last few years, I've been hanging out with a handful of addicts. Right now, it is what we believe one of the largest recovery ministries in the church in the entire country. There will be over 400 addicts that will show up at our church tonight, over 400 dope dealers, over 400 prostitutes, over 400 of every shape and kind, and they come in there and they allow me to share the love of God in their lives. I have dinner with them every single Tuesday night. We share a message every single Tuesday night, and God does incredible things in life. He's saving them. Today, people don't even know it, that in our church of 10,000 people, there are prostitutes who've come to know Jesus, their Savior, and are now sitting in the seats with them, and they don't have any idea about it. There are dope dealers of every kind. You say, what happened? I'll tell you what happened. God happened, and I'm hoping that somehow I can stir something in your soul that you'll get excited about. Wait a minute, I can watch God do something great with me. Listen, if he can do it with this guy who's unable to be educated, if he can do it with this guy who's from the wrong side of the tracks, listen, he can do it with you. One day I said, God, I want to do something really kind of weird. I said, I want to write a book. Like, huh? I threw it to God. So I have a little cabin up in northern Michigan. It's kind of a getaway place for me. Once in a while I'll drive up there, do some fishing. Just a little place. I just told my wife, I said, listen, I'm going to go up by myself for a few days. And what I decided to do is start a book. Start a book. Honestly, I didn't want to tell anybody about it because I've struggled so bad with staying focused that I thought, man, if I start this and don't finish it, I don't want people to know it. So I never told anybody about it. I didn't tell anyone. I got in my car, I drove up north, and as I'm getting up there, I sat down at the table there, it's right on a nice little lake, and I thought, what kind of book do I want? So I thought, you know what I'll do? I'll do a book with 12 chapters. That'll be nice. And so I wrote 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I thought 12-chapter book would be kind of good, and then the the lake began to call my name. Jim, come fishing. Come fishing. Forget the book. I went fishing. So I went out there and I'm fishing, and I honestly never picked up a pen again. A few months went by. My wife is away speaking at an event, and I got a phone call from a guy who'd been visiting our church. He's a fellow who's from Dallas. He's got a PhD, and real sharp guy. And he started visiting our church, and he said, Pastor, I was wondering if I could come by and see you. I said, yeah, I'd never even talked to the guy before. I said, sure. So we met. I said, how about we meet at a restaurant? He said, great. So we met at a restaurant. We're sitting there talking. He said, listen, I did something without permission, and I hope that I don't offend you. He said, I've been listening to you speak. And he said, I believe that your story and a lot of things that you have to say would impact people's lives. And so what I did was I went online and I took your messages and I wrote them all out and I submitted them to a publishing house. And he said, they liked it. And he said, honestly, the graphics have already been done, the art's already done. I didn't even ask your permission. And he said, here, I thought you might be interested to know that you wrote a book. I said, like what? He said, yeah. He said, it's a 12-chapter book. I thought that would be kind of good. I ain't making this up, man. I'm telling you. I said, yeah, 12 chapters sounds great to me. He says, listen, I only wrote 7 chapters because I thought maybe you might want to help with the last 5. He said, but here it is. And he handed me my book. I'm thinking like, what? So that night, my wife's flying in. I go to the airport. She comes out. Hey, babe, how you doing? I said, I'm doing great. Good to see you. And I had the book sitting on the little, thing that's in our seat there, my big truck. She said, what's that? I said, oh, it's a book I wrote. She said, huh? I said, yeah, I wrote a book. She said, you wrote a book? I said, yeah, look at it. Looked down, it said, by Jim Combs. I said, this is just the first 7 chapters of a 12-chapter book I've been putting together. She goes, what? I'm so proud of you. I said, me too. Me, special ed student, wrote a book. She said, how did it happen? I said, I don't want to talk about it. A few weeks later, we finished the rest of the 12 chapters. So what happened? I threw a dream to God, and God threw it back better. Oh, by the way, I had a second book come out just a few months ago. You say, you kidding me? No. See, I hired that guy from Dallas. Now he's working for me. And I will tell you this. Tomorrow I'm going to give all of you a copy as a gift. I brought you a copy of the second book to show it to you. Just I want to have you as a present. It's 52 talks that I give to the addicts on Tuesday nights. And maybe one day if God puts you in that world, you might be able to help some people with what we're doing. You say, what are you trying to say? What are you trying to say today? Listen, I'm not here to tell you I'm anybody. I'm here to tell you that when you learn to play catch with God, there's a law in the Word of God that you give and He'll give it back better. He said that. I didn't make this up. He said, give and it shall be given unto you, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. You're looking at a guy that experienced more of God than deserves 100 lifetimes. I can tell you stories that would blow your mind, that would shake your soul. But at the end of the day, I don't want to tell my stories. I want to hear about your stories. I want to hear about where God's taking you and what He's going to do with you. And over the next few days, I'm hoping somehow I can teach you a law of God, that when you learn to play catch with God with your life, and you give Him your dreams, and you give Him your life, and you give Him your talents, you give Him your energy, you give Him your past, you give Him your future. Hang on, because God will take you to places you never dreamed. You'll do stuff that won't make any sense whatsoever. And people will go, wow, that kid's a world changer. God did something crazy. He'll use the foolish things of this world to confound the wise. I can't wait to hang out with you for the next couple days. And if there's any way I can help you out, I'm kind of bored. Preaching one time a day is going to drive me crazy. You want to hang out? You let me know. All I'll teach you is how to throw your life to God. That's all it's about. Thanks, everybody. Hey, wait a minute, Evan. You keep the football. God bless you, everybody.
More of us than one with short attention spans. Okay, so you heard what he said, right? He's going to preach tomorrow in chapel, and then he's going to preach Thursday in chapel, and then take off back there. And Pastor Jim would like to help you between now and then. Paul's going to have lunch with him in the cafeteria today. I'm going to lunch with him there tomorrow. And I'd be smart about this if I were you. See what God can teach you. God bless you guys. See you later.